1 year after the Devourer War, Ambassador Cathara stood before the Galactic Council Assembly for the first time since requesting human aid. The Great Chamber looked the same as always, with representatives from 47 species arranged in concentric circles around the central speaking platform. But everything else had changed. She wore a new uniform that combined Zephyrian and human design elements. The fabric was traditional Zephyrian silk, but it incorporated human protective fibers that could stop energy weapons. On her collar was the symbol of the Human Defense Alliance, a circle of stars representing all member species. "Honorable representatives," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I stand before you today as the Zephyrian delegate to the Human Defense Alliance. 12 months ago I came to Nexus Station as a desperate refugee begging for help. Today I represent a civilization that has not only survived but prospered beyond our greatest hopes." The chamber was unusually quiet. Many of the representatives had requested this special session to address what they called the human problem. The rapid expansion of the Alliance was making other species nervous. "The facts are simple," Cathara continued. "When my people faced extinction, we received meaningless sympathy from most of you. When we asked humans for help, they gave us everything we needed. The Devourer swarm that terrorized this galaxy for decades no longer exists. 6 million Zephyrian refugees have been safely resettled on 3 new worlds. Our military is stronger than it has ever been. Our technology has advanced by centuries." Ambassador Thresk of the Altarian Council raised his hand to speak. "Delegate Cathara, while we celebrate your people's survival, many of us are concerned about the broader implications. The Human Defense Alliance now controls significant military resources across multiple sectors. Some members of this council feel threatened by this concentration of power." Cathara smiled. "Ambassador Thresk, I seem to remember your government declining to provide military assistance when we needed it. You cited the risks involved. Are you now saying you regret that decision?" "We're saying that the current situation creates instability," the Centauran representative interjected. "The Alliance is essentially a military bloc under human leadership. It changes the balance of power in our region." "Yes, it does," said a new voice from the chamber entrance. All heads turned to see Admiral Harrison entering with Ambassador Chen and 3 other human officials. They had been invited to address the council, but their early arrival surprised everyone. "Admiral Harrison," the council speaker said formally, "you were scheduled to appear in the afternoon session." "Plans change," Harrison replied, walking to the central platform. "We received some urgent intelligence that affects this discussion." Admiral Harrison activated a holographic display that showed the galactic rim territories. Red markers indicated points of interest across a vast section of space. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored representatives of various species," Harrison began. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures from the void sector. Something very large and very powerful has awakened after sleeping for thousands of years. The display zoomed in on a cluster of ancient structures orbiting a dead star. The reading showed power levels that dwarfed entire star fleets. "Our xenoarchaeology teams believe this is a harvester complex," Harrison continued. "Ancient machine intelligences that once consumed entire civilizations before going dormant. According to historical records, they're responsible for several mass extinction events in galactic history." The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. The harvesters were legendary nightmare stories that every species told their children. Most people believed they were myths. "How long before they reach inhabited space?" asked the Vorthan delegate. "Based on their current scanning patterns, approximately 8 months," Harrison replied. "They appear to be cataloging all technological civilizations in this spiral arm. When they finish their survey, they'll begin systematic harvesting operations." The council speaker looked pale. What kind of military response would be required to address this threat? "Everything," Admiral Harrison said simply. "Every ship, every weapon, every soldier in the galaxy." And even then, success would not be guaranteed. Ambassador Chen stepped forward. "The Human Defense Alliance is prepared to coordinate the defense effort. We have experience with extinction-level threats, and we have the logistics capabilities to manage a galaxy-wide military operation. Under human command." "Of course," the Altarian said suspiciously. "Under competent command," Chen corrected. "We don't care about rank or species. We care about results." For the next 3 hours, the humans presented their analysis of the harvester threat and their proposed response. The plan was staggering in scope. evacuation of frontier colonies, construction of massive defense platforms, development of new weapon technologies, and coordination of military forces from dozens of species. "This is exactly what we were afraid of," whispered the Centauran representative to his aide. "The humans are using this crisis to expand their control over galactic affairs." But other species were thinking differently. The Aquatic Federation delegate requested immediate alliance membership. The Crystalline Collective offered their entire industrial capacity to support the defense effort. Even some traditional rivals began discussing mutual defense agreements. As the day progressed, a line formed outside the human embassy on Nexus Station. Species that had maintained careful neutrality for centuries were suddenly interested in alliance protection. The humans evaluated each request carefully, but they accepted most applicants. Cathara found herself serving as an unofficial counselor to new alliance members. Her experience with human partnership made her valuable to species struggling to understand how the relationship worked. "They really don't want to conquer us?" asked the Harmony Collective's representative. "No," Cathara assured her. "They want competent allies. They'll share technology, provide military protection, and help with infrastructure development. In return, they expect loyalty, cooperation, and contribution to mutual defense." "What if we change our minds later?" "Then you leave," Cathara said simply. 3 species have already withdrawn from the alliance. The humans didn't stop them or punish them. They just said goodbye and remained open to future cooperation. Within 6 months, the Human Defense Alliance had grown to include 31 species. The transformation was remarkable not just in size but in capability. Alliance worlds shared technology freely, creating hybrid innovations that none of them could have developed alone. Trade flowed efficiently through protected space lanes. Scientific research accelerated as different species contributed their unique perspectives. Most importantly, the Alliance was ready when the Harvesters finally moved. The war lasted 2 years and involved every major civilization in the galaxy. The humans served as overall coordinators, but each species contributed according to their strengths. Zephyrian energy weapons were combined with human kinetic systems. Crystalline computer networks provided tactical coordination. Aquatic Federation underwater cities served as secure command centers. The final battle took place at the galactic core, where the last Harvester complex had retreated. A combined fleet of 12,000 ships from 47 species surrounded the ancient machines and destroyed them in a coordinated assault that lasted 3 days. When it was over, the galaxy was quiet. Cathara stood on the observation deck of the Alliance flagship and watched the debris field where the Harvesters had made their last stand. Admiral Harrison joined her at the viewing window. "It's finished," Harrison said quietly. "The galaxy is safe. For now," Cathara replied. "There will be other threats. There always are. And we'll face them together," Harrison said. "That's what we do now." Cathara nodded, thinking about how much had changed since that desperate day when she first asked humans for help. She had expected a token gesture. Instead, she had received a complete transformation of galactic civilization. "Admiral," she said, "I have a confession to make. When I first requested aid from your government, I didn't think you understood galactic politics." Harrison smiled. "We didn't. We still don't, really." "Then how did you know what to do?" "Simple," Harrison replied. "When someone asks for help, you help them. When someone needs protection, you protect them. When someone is in danger, you save them. It's not complicated." Cathara looked out at the stars where Alliance patrol ships were beginning to establish regular patrol routes. The galaxy was safer now than it had been in thousands of years. Not because of superior technology or overwhelming force, but because someone had finally taken the concept of mutual aid seriously. The humans had kept their promise. When asked for help, they had given everything necessary to solve the problem. And in doing so, they had created something entirely new, a galactic community based on genuine cooperation rather than symbolic gestures. As the flagship began its journey back to Alliance space, Cathara realized that her species' desperate plea had changed far more than anyone could have imagined. They hadn't just saved the Zephyrians. They had saved the entire galaxy, and all because humans actually meant what they said about helping their neighbors. 3 months after the destruction of the Devourer swarm, Ambassador Cathara walked through the rebuilt sections of Zephyr Prime's capital city. The construction was impressive, but it was also completely different from what had been there before. Human and Zephyrian workers labored side by side on buildings that combined both architectural styles. The new structures were stronger than the originals, designed to withstand attacks that might come from space. But they were also beautiful, incorporating the flowing artistic elements that Zephyrians loved. What surprised Cathara most was how normal this collaboration had become. Human engineers consulted with Zephyrian artists on every project. Zephyrian energy specialists worked with human technicians to create hybrid technologies neither species could have developed alone. Ambassador Cathara, a familiar voice called. She turned to see Admiral Harrison approaching with a tablet in her hands. The Admiral looked tired but satisfied. "Admiral," Cathara replied, "how are the refugee settlements progressing?" "Better than expected. We've successfully relocated 4 million civilians to the new colonies in the Kepler system. The temporary habitats are being converted to permanent cities. Your people seem to like the new worlds." Cathara nodded, but she felt troubled. This was the problem she was struggling to understand. The humans had done exactly what they promised. They had saved her people, defeated the Devourer swarm, and helped rebuild Zephyrian civilization. But the cost was becoming clear. "Admiral, I need to ask you something directly. What does your government want from us in the long term?" Harrison looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" "This level of assistance must come with expectations. Military bases, resource extraction rights, political control. Ambassador, we've been over this before. We want what any ally wants. Mutual cooperation, shared defense, and friendship." "But that's just it," Cathara said. "We're not the same species we were 6 months ago. Our military uses human weapons and tactics. Our technology is becoming hybrid human Zephyrian designs. Our young people are learning Earth languages. We're becoming something new." Admiral Harrison was quiet for a moment. "Are you saying that's a bad thing?" "I don't know," Cathara admitted. "My people are alive because of your help. We're safer and more prosperous than we've ever been, but we're also losing our independence." "You're not losing independence," Harrison said gently. "You're gaining partnership. There's a difference." That afternoon, Cathara attended a meeting with representatives from 7 other species. The news of humanity's victory over the Devourer swarm had spread across the galaxy, and everyone wanted to understand what it meant for galactic politics. The meeting was held in a neutral location on Nexus Station. Ambassador Chen represented humanity, along with a new human diplomat named David Park who specialized in military alliances. "Honorable colleagues," began Ambassador Thresk of the Altarian Council, "we're here to discuss the implications of recent events. The human intervention in Zephyrian space has created unprecedented changes in our regional security situation." "What kind of changes?" asked the Centauran representative. Chen answered directly. "The kind where genocidal threats get eliminated instead of ignored." The room fell silent. The other ambassadors looked uncomfortable. Finally, the Vorthan delegate spoke up. "Ambassador Chen, while we all appreciate the positive outcome, your government's methods have been quite dramatic. The level of military commitment was extraordinary." "It was necessary," Chen replied. "The Devourer swarm was a threat to everyone in this region. We eliminated that threat, but at what cost?" the Altarian asked. "Our intelligence reports suggest that human and Zephyrian societies are becoming increasingly integrated. Some of our analysts fear this represents a form of cultural conquest." Cathara felt obligated to speak. "Ambassador Thresk, I must object to that characterization. The humans have never forced any changes on us. Every integration has been voluntary and mutually beneficial." "Perhaps," the Altarian said carefully, "but the result is the same. The Zephyrian Confederation no longer exists as an independent entity. You've become part of a human alliance system." David Park leaned forward. "Ambassador Thresk, let me ask you something. When the Devourers were destroying Zephyrian colonies, did your government offer military assistance?" "We provided humanitarian aid and diplomatic support. Food packages and sympathy," Park said bluntly, "while an entire civilization was being murdered." "Direct military intervention carries enormous risks," the Centauran protested. "What if the Devourers had turned their attention to our worlds next?" "Then we would have helped you too," Chen said simply. "That's what allies do." The Vorthan ambassador looked thoughtful. "Ambassador Chen, hypothetically speaking, if another threat emerged that endangered Vorthan space, would your government respond with the same level of commitment?" "If you formally requested our assistance, yes." even though we've had limited diplomatic contact? Even though such an intervention might require significant human casualties? Yes, the word hung in the air like a challenge. Cathara could see the other ambassadors thinking carefully about what Chen had just said. For the first time in galactic history, a major military power was offering genuine mutual defense treaties. This is unprecedented, the Altarian whispered. It's also dangerous, the Centauran added. If everyone knows humans will respond to aid requests with total military commitment, it could destabilize the entire region. Weaker species might make requests they can't honor in return. Park smiled. Ambassador, we're not stupid. We evaluate every situation carefully. But when we commit to helping someone, we commit completely. Over the following weeks, the galaxy watched as other species began approaching humanity with various requests. The results were eye-opening. The Crystalline Collective, facing raiders in their outer territories, received a full human patrol squadron and advanced sensor networks. Within a month, the raider problem was completely eliminated. In return, the Crystallines shared their advanced crystallography knowledge, leading to breakthrough improvements in human computer technology. The Aquatic Federation, struggling with pollution in their home oceans, received human environmental restoration technology and expert teams. The cleanup project took 2 years, but it restored their world to pristine condition. The Federation responded by opening their advanced underwater cities to human researchers. Each successful partnership changed both species involved. Humans learned new technologies and gained new perspectives. Their partners received protection and resources, but also became part of a growing network of allied civilizations. Not every request was accepted. When the aggressive hegemony species asked for human help in conquering a neighboring system, they were flatly refused. When the Merchant Guild requested assistance in breaking trade agreements, the humans declined and suggested arbitration instead. Cathara began to understand the pattern. Humans would provide total support for legitimate defense needs and humanitarian crises, but they wouldn't help with conquest, oppression, or breaking existing agreements. 6 months after first requesting human aid, Cathara found herself serving as the Zephyrian representative to something called the Human Defense Alliance. 12 species had joined so far, all former recipients of human assistance. The alliance was unlike any organization in galactic history. Members weren't required to surrender sovereignty or pay tribute. Instead, they committed to mutual defense and shared technological development. Human military doctrine was taught to all member species, but each civilization maintained its own cultural identity. As Cathara reviewed the Alliance Charter, she realized something important. Her species hadn't lost their independence. They had gained something much more valuable, real security in a dangerous galaxy. But she also understood that this was only the beginning. Word was spreading that humans actually meant what they said about helping their allies. More and more species were beginning to consider what that might mean for their own futures. The old system of symbolic aid and empty promises was dying. In its place, something new was being born, a galaxy where asking for help actually meant getting it. General Vorthak stood on the command bridge of the Zephyrian flagship Stellar Wind and watched something he had never seen before. Human ships were arriving in his home system by the dozens, and they were unlike anything in his military experience. The humans had kept their promise. 47 hours after Admiral Harrison's meeting on Nexus Station, the first human vessels dropped out of hyperspace near Zephyr Prime. But what amazed Vorthak wasn't just their speed, it was their organization. General, his communications officer called out, "The human admiral is requesting a direct link. Put her through." Admiral Harrison's image appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Vorthak could see the busy bridge of a human warship. Officers moved with quick efficiency, and multiple screens showed tactical data from across the star system. "General Vorthak," Harrison said. "I'm Admiral Sarah Harrison, commanding the Human Third Fleet. We're here to help. I need a complete briefing on your defensive positions and civilian population centers. Admiral, with respect, I should warn you about what you're facing. The Devourer swarm has destroyed civilizations much older than yours. Their bioships regenerate damage and adapt to weapons fire. They learn from every battle." Harrison nodded seriously. "We've studied the data your ambassador provided. We have some ideas about how to handle them. But first, let's focus on protecting your people." Over the next 6 hours, Vorthak watched the humans work with incredible efficiency. They didn't just park their ships in orbit and wait for orders. They immediately began setting up what they called the defensive infrastructure. Human engineering ships deployed automated defense, platforms around Zephyr Prime. Medical vessels established field hospitals on the planet's surface. Transport ships began evacuating civilians from the outer cities to underground shelters that human construction teams had somehow built in less than a day. How did they do this so quickly? Vorthak asked his aide. Sir, they brought everything with them. The transport ships were already loaded with shelter components, medical supplies, and food rations. It's like they planned for this exact situation. What impressed Vorthak most was how the humans treated his people. They didn't act like conquerors or superior beings. Human officers worked alongside Zephyrian military leaders as equals. Human medics treated Zephyrian civilians with the same care they would show their own families. Commander Lisa Jackson, captain of the human destroyer Defiant, joined Vorthak on his bridge to coordinate defensive positions. She was young for such an important command, but she spoke with the confidence of someone who had seen many battles. General, she said, studying the tactical displays, your energy weapons are impressive, but they're not effective against Devourer bioarmor. We're going to try a different approach. What do you mean? Kinetic weapons. Old-fashioned projectiles fired at high velocity. The Devourers have adapted to energy attacks, but their armor isn't designed to handle physical impacts. Vorthak frowned. Kinetic weapons are primitive technology. We abandoned them centuries ago. Sometimes primitive works better, Jackson said with a smile. We've also brought some other surprises. The first test of human tactics came 3 days later, when Devourer scouts entered the outer system. Vorthak expected the humans to form a traditional battle line and engage with long-range weapons like every other species did. Instead, the humans did something completely unexpected. Commander Jackson's destroyer launched dozens of small missiles that looked like standard ordnance. But when they reached the Devourer scouts, they didn't explode. They attached themselves to the bioship's hulls and began broadcasting electronic signals. What are those doing? Vorthak asked. Cyber warfare, Jackson explained. The Devourers use a hive-mind communication system. We're jamming their signals and feeding them false information. On the tactical screen, Vorthak watched the Devourer scouts begin moving erratically. They started firing at empty space and colliding with each other. Within minutes, 3 of the bioships had destroyed themselves in confusion. Incredible, Vorthak whispered. No one has ever disrupted their communications before. That's because no one tried the right method, Jackson said. You can't jam a biological signal with energy weapons. You need to understand how their brains work. The remaining Devourer scouts retreated, but they carried the cyber viruses back to the main swarm. Within hours, reports came in of chaos spreading through the entire Devourer fleet. Ships were breaking formation, attacking each other and flying into asteroids. But the humans weren't finished. While the Devourers struggled with communication problems, human strike teams launched boarding attacks on their larger ships. This was something no species had ever attempted before. You're sending people inside those things? Vorthak asked in horror. Marines with special equipment, Admiral Harrison explained over the communication link. The bioships are vulnerable from the inside. Their external armor means nothing if you can plant explosives in their nerve centers. Vorthak watched the tactical feeds as human soldiers fought their way through the twisted corridors of Devourer ships. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that fired explosive rounds. More importantly, they moved with terrifying determination. The humans didn't fight like any species Vorthak had studied. They adapted their tactics constantly, used every available resource, and never retreated even when facing overwhelming odds. When their energy weapons proved ineffective, they switched to kinetic projectiles. When kinetic weapons weren't enough, they used boarding parties. When boarding parties couldn't reach their targets, they rammed damaged human ships into Devourer vessels. This is insane, one of Vorthak's officers said. They're treating this like total war. Because it is total war, Vorthak replied, beginning to understand. They're not trying to win a battle. They're trying to eliminate the entire threat. The turning point came when human scientists analyzed captured Devourer biomatter and developed what they called anti-hive weapons. These were devices that could sever the mental connections between individual Devourers and their collective consciousness. When the weapons were deployed, something unprecedented happened. Devourer ships stopped moving in coordination. Individual creatures began acting on their own, often in ways that contradicted the hive mind's commands. Some devourers even turned against their own ships. The hive mind is breaking apart, Admiral Harrison reported. We're seeing mass confusion across their entire fleet. Within a week, the devourer swarm that had terrorized the galaxy for decades was retreating in complete disarray. But the humans didn't let them escape. They pursued the fleeing bioships across 3 star systems, destroying every last one. Vorthak stood on his bridge watching the tactical display as the final devourer vessel exploded in silent fire. For the first time in months, the threat indicators on his screen showed green across all sectors. "It's over," he said quietly. Commander Jackson, who had become something of a friend over the past week, smiled tiredly. "This part is over. Now comes the hard work." "What do you mean?" "Reconstruction. Refugee resettlement. Rebuilding your colonies. Making sure something like this never happens again." Vorthak stared at her. "You're staying?" "Of course we're staying. You're our allies now. We don't abandon our allies." As Vorthak looked at the human ships maintaining protective positions around his homeworld, he realized something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. The humans hadn't just defeated the devourer swarm. They had demonstrated a completely different approach to warfare and diplomacy. When other species asked for help, they received tokens and sympathy. When someone asked humans for help, they received total commitment until the problem was completely solved. The galaxy would never be the same. Kithara woke up to the sound of her communication device beeping urgently. She had only been asleep for 4 hours, but the bright red light meant an emergency message from home. Her hand shook as she activated the screen. The face of General Vorthak appeared, his usually calm expression replaced by panic. "Ambassador, something incredible is happening. Human ships are arriving in our space. Dozens of them." "What?" Kithara sat up quickly. "That's impossible. I only met with them yesterday." "I'm sending you the scanner data now," the general said. "These aren't small ships either. We're detecting battlecruisers, carriers, and support vessels. They're requesting permission to establish what they call forward operating bases in 3 of our star systems." Kithara looked at the data on her screen. The numbers didn't make sense. Human fleets were spread across multiple sectors, all moving towards Zephyrian space. This was the largest military mobilization she had ever seen. "General, are you certain these are human ships? Could this be some kind of mistake? We've confirmed it multiple times. They're broadcasting human identification codes and speaking in Earth languages." "Ambassador, what exactly did you tell them?" Before Kithara could answer, her door chimed. She quickly put on her robes and opened it to find Ambassador Chen standing in the hallway with 2 humans in military uniforms. "Good morning, Ambassador," Chen said with a smile. "I hope we didn't wake you. This is Admiral Sarah Harrison and Colonel James Mitchell. They have some questions about the tactical situation." Admiral Harrison stepped forward. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and intense blue eyes. Her uniform was covered with medals and rank insignia. She looked like someone who had seen many battles. "Ambassador Kithara," the Admiral said, "we need to move quickly. Our advanced scouts report that the devourer swarm will reach your outer colonies within 2 weeks. We need detailed star charts, population data, and defensive positions for every Zephyrian world." Kithara felt dizzy. "Admiral, I think there may be some misunderstanding. When I requested aid, I was following standard diplomatic protocol. Usually such requests result in small symbolic gestures, not military intervention." The 3 humans looked at each other with confused expressions. Colonel Mitchell spoke up. "Ma'am, you said your people were facing extinction. We don't consider genocide a symbolic problem. But surely your government needs time to debate this decision. Congressional approval? Popular support?" Admiral Harrison shook her head. "Ambassador, when someone asks for help against an enemy that's committing mass murder, there's nothing to debate. The President activated our emergency response protocols 6 hours after receiving Ambassador Chen's report." Chen pulled out his tablet and showed her a document. "This is the official authorization from Earth. We're prepared to commit 3 full battle fleets plus humanitarian vessels, engineering corps, and medical teams. We estimate we can evacuate up to 50 million civilians if necessary." Kithara sat down heavily in her chair. The numbers were staggering. The entire Galactic Defense Council had fewer ships than what the humans were offering. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why would you risk so much for a species you barely know?" Because you asked us to, Chen said simply. And because it's the right thing to do. A new voice interrupted them. Excuse me, Ambassador Chen. It was the communication system from the hallway. You have urgent messages from the Altarian Council, the Centauran Republic, and the Vorthan Empire. They're requesting immediate meetings. Admiral Harrison smiled grimly. Word travels fast on Nexus Station. Within an hour, representatives from 6 different species had gathered in the main conference room. Kethara sat next to the human, still trying to process what was happening. The other diplomats looked worried and confused. Ambassador Thresk of the Altarian Council spoke first. His voice was high and nervous. Honored colleagues, we have received disturbing reports about massive human fleet movements. Surely this is some kind of misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Admiral Harrison replied calmly. The Zephyrians requested assistance against the Devourer swarm. We're providing it. But this level of response is completely unprecedented, said the Centauran representative. Aid requests are ceremonial in nature. They're not meant to trigger actual military action. Chen looked genuinely puzzled. I'm sorry, but I don't understand. If aid requests are just ceremonies, why make them at all? The room fell silent. The other ambassadors exchanged uncomfortable glances. Finally, the Vorthan delegate cleared his throat. Ambassador Chen, galactic politics operates on subtle principles. When a species requests aid, they're really asking for moral support and small symbolic gifts. This demonstrates goodwill without creating dangerous obligations. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, Colonel Mitchell said bluntly. The other diplomats gasped at his directness. Admiral Harrison leaned forward. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. The Zephyrians came to you asking for help against an enemy that's about to wipe them out, and you gave them medical supplies and good wishes? It's not that simple, the Altarian protested. Direct military intervention carries enormous risks. The Devourer swarm might turn their attention to us next. Exactly why we need to stop them now, Admiral Harrison said. Before they get any stronger, the Centauran ambassador looked worried. Admiral, your government may not fully understand the implications of this action. The Devourer swarm has never been defeated. They've consumed 17 civilizations over the past century. Military experts believe they're unstoppable. Then the military experts were wrong, Admiral Harrison replied. We've studied the data Ambassador Kethara provided. The Devourers use predictable tactics and have exploitable weaknesses. They're dangerous, but they're not invincible. For the next 2 hours, the human military officers explained their battle plans with calm confidence. They talked about establishing defensive perimeters, evacuating civilians, and conducting counterattacks against Devourer staging areas. They had already identified supply lines, communication networks, and strategic targets. Kethara listened in amazement as the humans discussed her people's survival, as if it were a technical problem to be solved. They weren't afraid of the Devourer swarm. They were planning to destroy it completely. The meeting ended with the other ambassadors looking stunned and worried. As they filed out, Kethara heard one of them whisper, "The humans don't understand galactic politics at all. This could change everything." After the room emptied, Admiral Harrison turned to Kethara. "Ambassador, I need you to contact your government immediately. We'll have advance units in Zephyrian space within 48 hours. We need to coordinate our efforts with your military leaders." "Admiral," Kethara said slowly, "I have to ask, what does your government expect in return for this assistance?" Harrison looked confused. "In return? We expect you to help us save your people. That's what allies do." As the humans left to continue their preparations, Kethara remained in the empty conference room. She thought about the other species who had turned her away with polite excuses. She thought about the human fleets racing across the galaxy to fight an enemy they had never encountered before. For the first time since the crisis began, Kethara actually believed her people might survive, but she was also beginning to realize that if the humans succeeded, the galaxy would never be the same again. The humans didn't just offer help. They offered everything, and they expected the same commitment in return. Kethara activated her communication device to contact her government. She had a lot of explaining to do. Ambassador Kethara walked through the long hallways of Nexus Station with heavy steps. Her blue skin looked pale under the bright lights, and her normally perfect robes were wrinkled from many sleepless nights. Behind her, 3 other Zephyrians followed quietly. They all carried the same worried look on their faces. Nexus Station was the biggest space station in the galaxy. Every important species had offices here. It was where diplomats came to make deals, sign treaties, and ask for help. Cathara had been here many times before, but never for something this serious. The Zephyrians were known across the galaxy as a proud people. They had beautiful cities that floated in the clouds of their home planet. Their technology could control energy in ways that amazed other species. For thousands of years they had been respected and admired by everyone. But now, everything was falling apart. The Devourer swarm had come to their star system 6 months ago. These creatures were like nothing anyone had ever seen before. They moved from planet to planet, eating everything they found. They consumed the land, the water, the air, and even the people. When they finished with a world, nothing was left except empty rock floating in space. Cathara had watched the reports come in from the outer colonies. Planet after planet went dark. Millions of her people had died or disappeared. The Zephyrian military tried to fight back, but their energy weapons barely scratched the Devourer ships. Their beautiful floating cities crashed to the ground one by one. Now the swarm was heading for Zephyr Prime, their homeworld. Cathara's government had sent her to Nexus Station with one mission: ask for help from anyone who would listen. She had already visited 12 different embassies. The conversations were always the same. The ambassadors would listen politely, shake their heads sadly, and promise to consider the matter. Some offered small gifts of medical supplies or food. Others said they would mention the problem to their governments. But everyone knew these were just empty words. This was how galactic politics worked. When someone asked for help, you made a nice speech and gave them something small to make yourself look good. Real help was dangerous. It meant risking your own people and ships. No one wanted to fight the Devourer swarm directly. The human embassy was at the end of a quiet corridor. Cathara had saved it for last because she didn't expect much from them. Humans were new to galactic politics. They had only joined the community 20 years ago. Most species thought they were too young and inexperienced to matter, but Cathara was desperate. She had to try every option, even if it seemed hopeless. The human embassy was smaller than the others, but it was clean and well organized. A young human woman at the front desk smiled when they entered. Her name tag said Sarah in several different languages. "Ambassador Cathara," Sarah said warmly. "We've been expecting you. Ambassador Chen is ready to meet with you right away." This surprised Cathara. Most embassies made her wait for hours or even days. She followed Sarah down a short hallway to a simple office. The walls were covered with pictures of Earth and its colonies. Behind a metal desk sat a middle-aged human man with kind eyes and gray hair. "Ambassador Chen Wei," he said, standing up to shake her hand. "Please sit down. Can we offer you anything to drink?" Cathara accepted a cup of tea and began her prepared speech. She had given it so many times that the words came automatically. "Honored Ambassador," she said, "I come before you today to request aid from the human government. The Zephyrian people face a terrible threat from the Devourer swarm. We humbly ask for any assistance you might be able to provide." She expected Chen to nod politely and give her the usual response. Instead, he leaned forward and asked, "How many people live on Zephyr Prime?" The question caught her off guard. About 400 million. "And how many ships do you have available for evacuation?" "Evacuation?" Cathara blinked. "We have perhaps 2,000 civilian transports, but they're not designed for long journeys." Chen was writing everything down on a tablet. "What about your military vessels? How many can carry non-combatants?" I'm not sure I understand why you need this information." "We need to know how many people we're dealing with," Chen said simply. "If we're going to help, we need to understand the full scope of the problem." Cathara felt confused. Other ambassadors had asked about the Devourer swarm's technology or their own strategic value to potential allies. No one had asked about saving civilians. "Tell me about the Devourer swarm," Chen continued. "How do they attack? What kind of ships do they use? Do they communicate with other species?" For the next 2 hours, Chen asked hundreds of detailed questions. He wanted to know about Zephyrian population centers, food production, industrial capacity, and defensive positions. He asked about the swarm's tactics, their biology, and their technology. A human military officer joined them and asked even more technical questions about ship designs and weapon systems. Cathara answered as best she could, but she felt more confused with every question. This was not how diplomatic meetings usually went. Where were the careful words and vague promises? Where were the discussions about what the Zephyrians could offer in return? Finally, Chen put down his tablet and looked directly at her. Ambassador Cathara, I want to be clear about something. When you say you're requesting aid, do you mean you want the human government to help save your people? Yes, she said slowly. But I understand that any assistance would be symbolic. Even small gestures would be appreciated by my government. Chen frowned. Symbolic? Ambassador, your people are about to be wiped out by an enemy they can't defeat. This isn't a symbolic problem. It needs a real solution. Of course, but surely you understand the practical limitations. No, I don't. Chen interrupted gently. You came here asking for help. If we agree to help, we're going to actually help. That means doing whatever it takes to solve the problem. Cathara stared at him. In all her years as a diplomat, no one had ever talked like this. She wondered if humans simply didn't understand how these things worked. I will need to contact my government immediately, Chen said, standing up. Can you stay on Nexus Station for a few days while we review the situation? Yes, but Ambassador Chen, I should warn you that 11 other species have already declined to provide meaningful assistance. The Devourer swarm is considered too dangerous to fight directly. Chen smiled for the first time during their meeting. Ambassador, I think you'll find that humans have a different approach to these matters. We'll be in touch very soon. As Cathara left the embassy, she felt a strange mixture of hope and worry. The humans had taken her request seriously in a way that surprised her, but she also suspected they didn't fully understand what they were getting into. The Devourer swarm had destroyed civilizations much older and more powerful than humanity. Still, as she walked back to her quarters, Cathara allowed herself to feel a tiny spark of hope. For the first time in months, someone had listened to her plea and promised real action. She just hoped the humans knew what they were doing.